The experts brought with them their skills and experience to help create a modern industrial complex. The search took 5 years, but they found oil, more than a mile below the seabed. But was it commercial? Was there enough? After 2 more years of drilling and probing, the answer was yes. Not only that, but very soon the land-based company announced that they too had found oil in plenty. Abu Dhabi had struck it rich. In 1962, a tanker took on the first cargo of crude oil from Das Island. Abu Dhabi was in business. Abu Dhabi had joined the club of the oil-rich Middle East. 27 years had passed since the first concession to explore was granted. Tens of millions of pounds had been spent to develop the offshore field alone. With wells flowing on land and sea, Abu Dhabi suddenly found itself with the riches needed to turn dreams into reality. One long-cherished ambition was to unearth the ancient civilization that had existed in this part of the world. This great stone slab attested to it, chosen by some unknown artist 5,000 years ago for his carving of deer. Deer in Arabic is Dhabi, Abu Dhabi, the land of deer. So teams of archaeologists began their painstaking and patient work. Today, the relics and treasures they uncover are studied and admired in the Museum of Al Ain. But for Abu Dhabi, the riches of archaeology were like one grain of sand in the desert when compared with the gigantic fortune that was now gushing from oil. On this poor desert state, what would be the impact of sudden, immense wealth? How would it cope? History provided the answer. In August 1966, the ruler's power passed to his brother, Sheikh Zayed, an enlightened administrator. Dedicated to leading his country into the 20th century, he declared that all this money should at once be set to work for the benefit of his people. Abu Dhabi, he argued, could now well afford to modify the harsh asperities of the Bedou's life and bring him gently into the present day. Sheikh Zayed commissioned a development plan, a plan to provide all the adjuncts to the 20th century that Abu Dhabi had never known. A state hospital, housing, schools, roads and motorways, drainage, an airport, a harbor. At that time, Abu Dhabi had none of these essential services. No wharves, no warehouses, and coastal waters so shallow that visiting ships were obliged to anchor up to 8 miles offshore. So a fleet of dhows and barges was assembled, and from them mountains of materials were dumped onto the beach. And then it all started to happen. days of the palm leaf huts were over. For every citizen of Abu Dhabi, a house, a modern house with electricity from a switch and water from a tap. Here, in a place isolated for centuries from everything that lay beyond the desert, the contemporary world surges in. A harbour with a 4.5-mile dredged channel and quaysides where ships from all over the world can discharge and load. An international airport to receive the world's airlines. Dual carriage roads and broad boulevards for a modern Abu Dhabi town. A town planned for growth and expansion. A bridge to connect the island of Abu Dhabi with the mainland, with Al Ain town 100 miles away, and with other parts of the Emirates. At Al Ain, the main population centre after Abu Dhabi town, where fresh water runs freely from underground springs, an experimental farm was established. To study how vegetables can be grown in the desert sands. How these rich leaves and colours can replace the wilderness. More agricultural experiment on Saadiyat Island, a few miles off Abu Dhabi town. There, the Arid Lands Research Centre offers a strange sight, greenhouses in the desert. The aim is to make maximum use of the area's natural resources, sand, sunlight and sea. Through a curtain of seawater, air is drawn, enabling the atmosphere